Welcome to the AA Podcast, our little corner of the web where we are not afraid to discuss tough questions like,
when did nutrition, health, movement, and stress management become alternative medicine?
Where we embrace challenges in all aspects of life to become healthier and stronger versions of ourselves.
And where food and movement are the best kinds of medicine, and cooking meals at home is a revolutionary act. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the AA Podcast. This is Ashley Olson.
And I'm Andrea Crane.
We are back once again together across state lines.
I know.
The last 2 weeks we were fortunate to be
tearing
together.
up Idaho.
Yes. Super fun weekend. Can't wait to do it again. And before we get started with this week's topic, we are going to share our weekly Bible verse as always, and mine is coming from Psalm 24, 1 and 2, and it says, "The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. For he hath founded it upon the seas, and established it upon the floods."
I love it. Okay, I think you copy me though, because I am also in Psalm. So mine is Psalm 37:3. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and enjoy safe pasture.
Love it.
Okay.
All right. So today's topic, we thought would be a great one to kind of just go over some
We
supplements.
always think what we're talking about is great.
Well, that's true.
That goes without saying.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean,
anyway,
if we weren't recording it, then we wouldn't think it was a big topic, and we wouldn't think that you guys needed to hear from us.
So you better listen up. There's some knowledge bombs coming your way.
Yeah. So today we're going to talk about some supplements. One of the biggest questions that I get, especially as a trainer and nutrition coach, would be, what supplements do I need to take, Ashley? And the first thing that I always say is like, let's hold off on that first and let's focus on your diet, and let's see what maybe you might feel like you're lacking. I would say that there probably are some basic supplements that most people need, but I like to kind of see where they're at, because a lot of times you can clean up their diet, get them working out consistently, and they see dramatic improvements in the areas that they were struggling. And so I like to start with that first. How about you?
Absolutely. Yeah, so I kind of have some major tenets to my philosophy on supplementation. And the first, I guess, like the first commandment of my supplementation philosophy is you can't out supplement a bad diet. So
exactly,
there really isn't anything like there's no magic bullet. There's no like I can't give you a pill that will take the place or transform the stuff that you're eating into really, really healthy food if you're not already eating it. So that's number one. Number two, and I tell patients this all the time, and it's funny because a lot of them come in and I think they're almost a little bit defensive sometimes, and I get it. Like, I understand this more than they know, but it's almost like they're expecting me to give them a list of 30 things to go and buy and take for the rest of their lives. And so I make sure that I tell them up front, listen, I don't like green pharmacy any better than regular pharmacy. At the end of the day, to me, a handful of pills is a handful of pills. And so I would much, much prefer that someone get everything that they can from food. That is always the first lens that I click on when I'm looking at a patient and trying to help them to reach health goals. However, that does not mean that we always can get everything that we need from food for a variety of reasons. But I like that it's a tool in the toolkit. But I use it as judiciously as possible because I also want to be sensitive to people's financial considerations as well because it can be
Yeah.
really really expensive.
Oh, and
Insurance
especially if you're
doesn't
getting
cover this.
hit up with these ads that, oh my gosh,
Right.
you need to take XYZ because it does
Yeah.
this, and it's like,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, that's $60 a month. I
Mhm.
mean, that stuff adds up fast.
It really does. And so, I and in the interest of full disclosure here, I have a pill container and it's crammed full. But I also have like raging autoimmunity and I've struggled with this since I was 16 years old. And so I didn't discover functional medicine. I didn't discover this way of eating. I didn't discover any of this until I was, you know, um, almost, yeah, probably around 40, 41 years old. So it was a lot of decades of doing the exact wrong thing. And so now I have things pretty well dialed in terms of like the supplements that I take. I switch things up periodically based on my needs, but yeah, I do take gosh, I probably take I would say 8 to 10 things in the morning and 8 to 10 things in the evening. And so
Okay.
just full disclosure, that's what I do.
Yeah. I Well, I can when we once we go through some of these lists, I can kind of maybe we can both say, "Oh yeah, I take this every day."
Mm-hmm.
That might be helpful for
Yeah,
the
that's a good
listeners.
idea.
Yeah. And
And so do you
yeah,
want to
and
talk about how we're dividing this up?
yeah, so we're going to have a two-part series. Hopefully this is going to be around the 30-minute mark. We
Ha!
keep aiming for that, and
We'll
well,
see.
we just like to talk. So
Yeah.
the first part is we're going to kind of talk about like some basic supplements that you might um, hear of and
Mhm.
wonder if you should be taking them, and we're going to um, suggest maybe some that um,
Yeah, listen, if this isn't the way if this isn't the way you wanna break this up, then we can retool, but on our outline here, so I just kinda threw up a bunch that I typically will try to get people from food,
oh, okay.
and so these
I
are
didn't understand your outline, so
That does not surprise me. That
okay.
came out of the recesses of a very addled mind. So, yeah, so this first list is stuff that I will try to get from food if I can,
Mhm.
in a patient's diet or if they're willing to or able to. And then the second list, and that's probably going to be part two, are those things that it's really really hard to get to a clinically significant dose without supplementation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Approved.
I know. Ashley's kind of my boss, so I like to run things past her periodically.
Yeah.
um
Okay.
mhm.
Okay. So this episode,
Brought to you by Andrea's outline. That
yeah,
is, yeah.
we're gonna talk about supplements that you can definitely get from food.
Mhm.
Now, would so when we go through this list, though, would you say that with the food quality that we have
Mhm.
now in our
Mhm.
society, which I think we can all agree is degrading,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um, would you say that these vitamins that we're going to talk about, you would
Mhm.
have to actually eat a higher quantity of these
Mm.
foods?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And so I guess I'll start to answer this question with just kind of
Maybe.
a theological certainty, and that is that things are kind of tending toward disorder, right? We're tending towards this entropic. Um, existence where disorder is kind of reigning, right? Like you look at diseases now and think about when you were a kid. You're younger than I am, by 10, what, 13 years. But I think back to when I was a kid, and I'm sure you could say the same, that I didn't really know more than 1 or 2 people with Alzheimer's, right? I
Oh, yeah.
didn't know people who had dementia. I didn't and over the last, gosh, 25, 30 years, it just seems like this explosion of disease. Autoimmunity, like, that was unheard of.
Oh,
Um,
it's like now you hear it like, "Oh, yeah."
Oh, absolutely, and so it's not that, well, our screening mechanisms are better, or this or that. No, no,
We're
I
sicker. We're
reject
more
that. We
sick.
are sicker. Yeah, we're absolutely more sick. And so yeah, you look at what we're seeing in primary care, and your patients have, you know, 10 or 12 diseases that they're trying to manage. And it just didn't used to be like that. So yeah, when you say uh degradation of food quality, yes, like every like everything else, it is not as great as it used to be, and so the soil quality is crummy. I will say, let me put in a plug for a guy that I've been following for a really long time. His name is Joel Salatin, S like Sam, Alatin, Joel Salatin. He is absolutely incredible. What this guy is doing, he does regenerative farming and he teaches it. And his whole deal is that you want to replenish the quality of the soil. You want to treat animals with dignity and respect. You give them the best lives that you can, and then you're thankful for them when they uh, give their lives to provide you with nourishment. And it's just such a beautiful way to get food. And so yeah, anyway, if you want some incredible reading, look into Joel Salatin. His farm is called Polyface Farms, and it's Poly like Poly, and then face like face. It's all one word. Polyface Farms, and he's just an extraordinary individual. So anyway,
Awesome.
but he is replenishing the soil. So if you're growing things yourself, I think that there's a lot more nutrition to be had in good soil because you can amend it yourself. You can improve it over the years. I'm endeavoring to improve my soil quality with, compost. I'm not great at compost yet. In fact, I haven't actually created a gram of compost yet, but I am like dumping half degraded stuff into my garden beds and just hoping they become dirt. So yeah, but it's improving the soil quality for sure.
Okay. So why don't we start with a common one, vitamin C?
Yes, I love vitamin C. Vitamin C, it gets short shrift because it's so common. Um, we all remember the orange flavored chalk that we used to have to chew up as kids.
Oh my gosh,
Do you remember the vitamin C's?
yes.
Yeah, they're
Yep.
so yeah, kind of bitter. But yeah, vitamin C. So Linus Pauling did an incredible amount of research on vitamin C, and he was kind of the father of high dose vitamin C. There's a lot of evidence on the efficacy and some really powerful effects that can be had with high dose vitamin C. And I think it's called, is it orthomolecular something or other. Anyway, that's kind of the Linus Pauling folks. I think that maybe they have a journal called Orthomolecular. But anyway, yeah, there's a lot of great data on high dose C. And so like we always think
What?
about C when you're sick.
Yeah, and
And
what would be considered high dose?
high dose, well, oh my gosh. Okay, that's a can of worms because listen, the current RDA for vitamin C, this is kind of just off the top of my head. I may be off by a little bit, but not by much. I believe it's 60 milligrams a day. That's 60, 60. Um, so when I tell a
Is that
patient to take 1 or 2 grams, that's high dose, right?
oh, yeah.
But if you are putting 15 grams or 20 grams of vitamin C into an IV bag and infusing it, that's major high dose. And those
Okay.
are the kinds of doses that Pauling was looking at. So yeah, vitamin C, not only is it good for coughs and colds, and I recommend in to split up your dose. Put 12 hours in between. It's water soluble, so if you're not absorbing or making use of the compound, it'll just go out in the urine. And so that's why I have people split it up so that you get the benefit of both doses. And 1 to 2 grams twice a day when you're feeling sick. But it's also good for membrane stability. So I will recommend people that have bloody noses frequently, bleeding gums, things like that. First, you want to check and see if they are on blood thinners because that's an important distinction to make. But yeah,
Mm.
if they're having uh, bruising easily, again, rule out the get to your primary care, rule out the scary stuff. But then, take some vitamin C. If you're getting nosebleeds more frequently, take some vitamin C. If your kid's getting nosebleeds, take vitamin C and see if they just need to shore up the membrane stability. Because if you've got real friable tissue or delicate tissue, you want to make it stronger. So that will do it.
So, if we're talking about foods that have vitamin C, what
Mm.
would be the top earners on your list?
Well, I mean, citrus for sure. But probably my favorite is peppers. So sweet peppers have a ton of vitamin C in them. And in fact, and our listeners probably know this because they're super smart, but um, iron is better absorbed in the presence of vitamin C. And so we usually tell people, hey, take your iron with vitamin C. But if you're trying to get it from food, then things like steak and peppers, right? So that's a heme source of iron with a C containing vegetable or fruit in this case. And yeah, they just work brilliantly together.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So, next on our list is omega 3.
Hmm. Yeah. So this has gotten a lot of press. So, like inflammatory fats versus non inflammatory fats. So, even if you think that you haven't heard of omega 3s, you probably have. Are you hearing my dogs? They are so
No.
naughty. Oh, okay. They are losing their minds. All right. So, yeah, you probably have heard of this because anytime people talk about inflammatory fats, they're talking about omega 6s. And if they're talking about anti inflammatory fats, they're talking about omega 3s. Now, the subject is a little more complex than that. There's, an arachidonic acid pathway that is fed by omega 6s, and that leads to some increase in inflammation in the system. Um, but there it's a little more nuanced than that. However, I won't get so far into the weeds because people will fall asleep. But
You're already throwing out big words.
Ashley's like, I'm already there. Her eyes rolled back in her head like she's gone. Okay, so omega 3, this is the anti-inflammatory. So if you want to quell inflammation, we're talking things like fish oil. Um, I gosh, I I've got cod liver oil on here. It's a little further down, but I will always put in a plug for cod liver oil. But omega 3s, you can get this from fish. You can get this from having a fatty fish every week. In fact, 2 to 3 times a week, eating fatty fish is great for you. And I love salmon, of course. Everybody loves salmon, but it's also a bioconcentrator because salmon is a big fish and big fish eat little fish. And so if little fish have mercury in them or other toxins, then a salmon is going to eat that and it's going to bioaccumulate it in its own body. So if you want to eat really healthy fat containing fish, you can go with things like sardines. And you knew I was going there. I could see your face as you realized where I was going with this.
I was
Yeah,
like,
Not a
She's either
fan.
going super bougie or no,
No.
just go to the dollar section at Walmart and get a can of
Oh my gosh.
sardines.
No, no. There are good sardines. There are good sardines. I love Wild Planet, and there's actually a lot of really great companies that are putting together sardines. But sardines, like liver, I find are a very hard sell to my patients. So generally, I just end up supplementing because salmon is crazy expensive. Mackerel is another really great fatty fish that will give you a nice dose of omega 3s. Um, but anyway, um, so moving on, that's omega 3s.
Okay. Selenium.
So selenium. Okay, this is a great one, and selenium really has come into its own as we've been talking about Hashimoto's and autoimmune thyroid disorder, and people, so many people walking around with low thyroid, and so one of the mainstays of Hashimoto's protocols, if you will. And I'm really hesitant to recommend any of these protocols because there's a lot of them that are not outright treating the thyroid disorder. And thyroid, you will die if you don't have any thyroid. You'll die if you have too much. You'll die if you have not enough. And so it's a really important hormone. Um, uh, anyway, for selenium, you cannot make thyroid hormone without selenoproteins, and there are enzymatic systems that will um, assist you in making thyroid hormone inside the gland of the thyroid, and those are dependent upon the cofactor selenium in order to work. So selenium, um, it is found in is kind of famous for being found in Brazil nuts. In fact,
Hmm.
I think there's an episode of Monk where somebody overdosed on Brazil nuts, and that's how they
Oh
died.
gosh.
Um, so anyway, no, you're not going to die from eating Brazil nuts, but you can run into selenium toxicity if you eat too many Brazil nuts. I mean, Brazil nuts are packed. Like if you look at a list of selenium containing foods, Brazil nuts so far off the chart at the top, like the closest second is not anywhere close. So
I just pulled up a chart that has it. Brazil nuts are
mm,
990%
yeah.
of your daily value
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, and
for
again,
1 ounce.
the daily values are garbage, right? Their
Okay.
daily values are enough to keep a reference disease at bay, and if you want to know what that means, I'd be happy to go into it. But um it's suffice it to say it's garbage. However, selenium, what I think is really cool is that there are other things in food, right? Like when you get whole food sources of things, then there are other cofactors in there, and there are other other micronutrients at play. And so inside of a Brazil nut, it's obviously not just selenium. There's other things in there. And so here's what we know, and I was taught this during my nutrition education, and I think the class was actually entitled whole food supplementation. Be getting that wrong, but it was a great class. Talked about whole food sources of micronutrients that you can use for patients, and so a Brazil nut is a perfect example of where the sum of the parts is greater than the whole, because if you have a patient eat 2 to 3 Brazil nuts a day, 2 Brazil nuts will supply about 100 micrograms of selenium. Okay. Now, in order to get to a therapeutic dose, taking a pill of selenium, you have to give 200 micrograms a day. So 2 Brazil nuts, which supply 100 micrograms, have the same clinical outcome as giving 200 micrograms in a pill. So that means that there's something else. There's that certain like je ne sais quoi that's in a Brazil nut, right? That we don't know what it is. but that's literally food that God made and put together. And so, yeah, in order to supplement selenium, we literally have to give twice as much. So I find that very cool.
So would you say, I think I've heard you say once before, like, a Brazil nut a day or something like that?
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, for people that have thyroid disease, you can go a little higher on that, but I will typically recommend 2 Brazil nuts a day because that's kind of um, physically speaking, you'll get the same response as if you were supplementing with a pill that's 200 mics per day or micrograms per day, and that's the typical dosage.
All right. Zinc.
Zinc. Okay, zinc is a good one. I think I've mentioned this before,
Yeah,
about
so
pulsing
some of
it.
these, yes, some of these
Okay.
supplements that we are talking about, if we did a whole episode on if you feel like you might be nutrient deficient, and
Okay.
we're talking a lot about the same ones, but just in a different context.
Okay. Okay. That's why this sounds familiar. But yes, zinc, very important. And we all know zinc. It's kind of like vitamin C these days, of cough and cold fame, right? And do you remember there was this formulation of zinc that you would stick up your nose and it was for colds? Do you remember what that was called? What the heck was that?
Was it
Zycam.
Zycam?
Yes. Yes. Do you know that people permanently lost their smell using that stuff?
Yeah,
Isn't that
you said
crazy?
that.
Yeah,
That's so
they took it
crazy.
off the market. But anyway, which I find really strange because that zinc is one of the things that I give a lot of in people that have long COVID and have lost their sense of smell for a long time. So
Yeah. Does
anyway,
something with the um is it nerves?
it's with the olfactory receptors. So
Oh, right.
yeah,
Okay.
it's those receptors that actually cling on to the scent molecule.
Mm.
Somehow they get destroyed in the presence of too much zinc, but they are restored in the presence of enough zinc. So anyway,
Mm.
yet
Okay.
another Goldilocks atom. Yeah.
So where would we find this in foods?
Well, zinc you will find. Well, first let's talk about doses of zinc. So, you let's see, when someone is sick, um I will typically give 50 to 100 milligrams of zinc a day. um and I want to say this: if you're taking pills to get zinc and you're taking 50 to 100 milligrams a day, I don't want you taking that every single day. So
Mm.
if I've got someone, gosh, if I'm treating a thyroid something or other, or a raging autoimmune disease, or something like that, then I am going to be sure and tell those folks that, listen, take your zinc, but take 1 week off a month. So just whatever that is, just maybe the first week of the month, maybe when it's the first, then you don't take it again until the eighth. But by pulsing it, it seems to have a better effect. Here's the beauty of food sources of zinc is that you don't have to abstain from zinc, right? Because we'll get lower doses, but it's you can have a more steady input of it from food sources. So
Okay.
things like meat, really well raised red meats are high in zinc. We probably all know about pumpkin seeds, which are
Mm.
extraordinary. They're very high in zinc too.
I forgot
um,
about those.
yeah, yeah. So, beef, lamb, your red meat foods will be very high in zinc. Yeah, that and pumpkin seeds and those, that's probably the best sources. You can also get it from other beans and seeds, chickpeas, for instance, but I would stick mainly with the red meat and pumpkin
Okay.
seeds. Yeah.
Red meat is not bad for you folks.
No, it isn't. It's very good for you, especially if it's well raised.
Exactly. Which also leads us into iron.
Yes. So iron. Um. So, oh gosh, iron is hard. Iron is really hard. I would.
I remember when we did our last our on our nutrient deficiency.
Mm,
It's one of those you have to have it in the Goldilocks, right? Like that
oh
zone.
yeah. Yeah.
And you can't just go sell anybody on the street. Yes, you need to go take a zinc supplement because
You mean iron?
they
Yeah.
iron
Yeah.
supplement because um
Yeah, you can stop them up quick. It can cause some profound constipation, rivaling only opiates. It can be pretty bad. It can turn your stools black, which is always fun to try to explain to people. Um, so yeah, it's just and it's super fussy. It doesn't want to absorb. The best sources are animal sources, heme sources of iron. So that heme, um, that portion of the protein that actually carries oxygen within the red blood cell, that's called a heme, and within that heme, that's where the iron sits. So each heme subunit of that protein, there are four in each red blood cell, and so each unit will carry an atom of iron, and the body is actually quite good at restoring and recycling its own iron. So the spleen recycles red blood cells, and so it kind of tears apart the old red blood cells because a red blood cell will only live for 120 days. And so then you kind of tear it apart, and it will recycle that iron because that's really valuable. So it's kind of like getting the titanium out of a I don't know, a phone or wherever titanium lives these days. Um, so anyway, the body will recycle. However, we've got a lot of folks that are iron deficient, and I see this primarily in women. When they're menstruating, we've got we oh my gosh, we've got just a an epidemic of PCOS, and so with this comes along really heavy menstrual cycles, and because of that, they're losing more blood than they should, and that really takes a toll on her body over time. And so I'm catching a lot of anemia, um, and so then what happens? You've got this blood loss, and then it's hard to get that iron back into the system. So anyway, heme iron, that's where it's at. Liver is a fantastic source of iron. Like if you could eat like 4 to 6 ounces of liver a week, that would be amazing. Yeah, I'm getting all the
Well,
teeth. I'm getting. Ashley has this face
Ugh.
that I get when she's like, "Yeah, okay, all right, I'm not doing that."
Well, okay, so because it has the name in it, cod liver oil, does it count?
Okay, well, this is like this is literally cod livers. So it's
Yeah,
fish liver rather than a beef liver, a cow liver.
right.
So a little different. It's not going to be as rich in iron, but it's going to have a ton of omega 3s. It's going to have a ton of vitamin D, and it is going to have a metric crap ton. Now, that's a lot of vitamin A. And we don't really get vitamin A from very many sources,
Okay.
except liver. So, yeah.
All right. I know I am open to the liver concept. I just have to get past my
That
disgust.
I know. I know.
Yeah.
There's a smell and a taste, and it's very and I describe lamb this way too, because people that don't eat a lot of lamb, that I always tell them, okay, there's a lammy taste,
Yeah.
and it's a very distinct smell and taste to lamb.
In
Liver's the same
fact,
way.
in fact, when I was up there, you had some lamb
Mm.
cheese, and we
Oh
were both
yeah. Wait.
both like, okay, okay.
Huh? Was it a
Oh,
sheep?
no, not
No,
lamb, sheep. It was sheep.
yeah, but sheep are lambs. Lambs are
Well,
sheep.
that's true.
Yeah.
I was thinking goat for a
Oh my
second.
gosh. Yeah.
Never mind. But
Yeah.
it was lamb cheese
Yeah,
or
it
sheep
was.
cheese,
It was
whatever.
it was sheep
And
cheese. Yeah.
the first bite, I was like, "Oh, it's so
Whew.
good," and then all of a sudden, it was like that aftertaste, and I was like,
Sheep.
"Oh, that is sheep."
I know. I know. And then we laughed for the next 10 minutes because one of us said, "That is bad." Oh my gosh. Still
Oh,
funny.
good.
Okay.
Okay.
Anyway, next next one.
Next one's fiber, which we definitely talked about in the that podcast, and I'll link that episode in the show notes. But because it was a really good one, I mean,
I mean,
aren't they
well,
all?
aren't they
But
all? Was it the
fiber
poop
is
one?
definitely
Was it
that
the
was
poop one?
the it could have been the poop one, yep.
Okay. That sounds right.
But fiber's one that I know I struggle with, and so I
Yeah, why don't you talk
supplement.
about your fiber journey?
Yeah. So I don't really know where to start, I guess, but
I don't think you ate hardly any fiber 10 years ago. Like, I
probably not.
yeah.
Okay, so but when I had moved out of the house for the first time, and I was cooking my own meals, I was nicknamed at work the black bean girl.
Mm, mhm.
And I literally ate black beans and chicken. I could eat that for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every
Ugh,
single day, and that is literally what I ate. And
and I bet
so
it was white meat chicken too.
oh, yeah.
Was it breast? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yuck.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
it
Mhm.
was so bland. I don't
Uh-huh.
even know if I put salsa on it
Oh
or
my.
cheese. Yeah,
Okay.
it was very basic. Um, and thankfully I've learned how to cook
Look
since
at you
then. But
now. Yeah.
um but um anyway, that's I mean, I didn't know it at the time. I just liked black beans, but I mean, that was my fiber source basically.
Right.
Well, and
Right.
then when I got married, Christian didn't like chicken and black beans every
Mm.
day.
Uh-huh. He
And
didn't?
no, it
What?
was very strange. I was like, well, this is what I like. So, yeah,
Uh,
so I kind of faded out from eating chicken and black beans every day because
mhm.
he just wasn't up for it. But, um, then that led to me basically getting no fiber because I did not enjoy vegetables. I didn't know a way to enjoy vegetables. Um,
Right.
we joked that the only vegetable that I ate as a kid was corn, and that's really not
Mhm.
a vegetable. So
Oh, no, it isn't.
anyway, a long story short, meeting Andrea and really wanting to get better control of my digestion and figuring
Mm.
all that out. Um, is it the sunflower sun fiber flour or what is
Mhm.
that?
Sun fiber.
Sun
Sun
fiber.
fiber is probably what you're yeah.
So that's what I use now. Talk to about like benefiber is a big one. Is that what? Is there any
Um,
difference?
yeah, so all these types of fibers, there are soluble fibers, there's insoluble fibers. And basically it's just how the structure of the fiber, like a fiber is a carbohydrate, and so depending on whether it's soluble in water or insoluble in water, that sort of splits them into two categories. And then
Hmm.
further, we could say, is a fiber a prebiotic fiber?
Mm,
And that further separates the sun fiber from like a benefiber,
okay.
or a methyl cellulose based fiber. So a cellulose or methyl cellulose or a hydroxymethyl cellulose, those types of fibers are not considered prebiotic. Prebiotic actually has a definition. Guar is a prebiotic fiber, and the definition for prebiotic is that in order to be called prebiotic, it has to feed up beneficial microbes in the human gastrointestinal tract. So, prebiotic fibers are going to feed up those bacteria that have been proven to be beneficial. So we've got beneficials, we've got those that aren't beneficial that don't really, they don't help or hurt. And then we've got those that if they get out of control, they are not good for us. And so something like a methyl cellulose will feed up just sort of random populations of bacteria, but something very specific like guar gum that is a prebiotic fiber, it feeds up beneficials.
And so guar gum, is it pretty much does it cause any constipation um
Mm,
that you know of?
no, I mean, fiber can always, okay, if people don't do fiber right, you can actually cause a blockage in the intestine. But you have to like really work at not taking in any fluid in order to do that. So I don't recommend that. Always recommend fiber with lots of water. Um, because fiber, you put water to it and you kind of make a sludge, right?
Mhm.
And so we want to make sure that that continues to move out of the stomach into the small intestine, that it feeds everything that's in the small intestine, or I'm sorry, that it continues to move through the small intestine until it can get to the colon, where it then feeds those trillions of bacteria that are there in the colon. And we don't want it sticking in the small intestine in those huge blobs, right? So you want to have make sure that you have plenty of water to go along with your fiber. So that is an instance if you're kind of blocking things up. I mean, you could potentially cause some constipation. Um, but yeah,
Mm,
I would say more so it's going to be some bloating, especially as you're getting used to increasing fiber.
okay. And so ways that you can obviously get it is a supplement like sunflower fiber, but foods that you can get it.
Foods,
Yeah.
yes, yes, yes. So one of the ones that I love is chia. Chia's got a lot of great fiber in it. I like flax, so those two seeds there will give you a lot of fiber. And please don't at me about the lectins. I don't want to talk about those.
Christian will
Um,
be writing you.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. All right. Tell him tell him to take it up with me later.
Okay.
Artichokes and asparagus and garlic. These, in fact, there are certain types of artichokes. There's a Jerusalem artichoke that I am trying to grow. I will be trying to find some starts this year. They actually go by another name, and that is fartichokes, because because apparently their effect can be quite profound if you don't go low, start slow with
Oh
doses of
gosh.
them. Yeah, so they can cause some considerable gas. But garlic, also, if you are looking for an insane source of great fiber, I want you to look into cacao nibs.
Mm,
These are
yeah.
these little bits of cacao. They're basically unprocessed cocoa bean. So that it's what chocolate comes from, but it's when chocolate is still healthy. So it's in that bean form, and they break it, they like, you know, grind it into these small little nibs. Not the dust. I'm not a huge fan of the cacao powder, but I do like the nibs. They add some crunch to like a smoothie. They're
Mm,
great in there, and they've got tons and tons of fiber.
yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, the next one. Yes. Boy, this is
So
contentious, isn't it?
I know. So this one, I was telling Andrea that we had to have this in here because I feel like there's two camps. There's the ones that love it, which include me and Andrea, and then there's others that say it's a waste of time and money.
Yes, and this much maligned supplement is none other than collagen. I love collagen. I recommend collagen all the time. I'm a huge fan. I think what happens is that people often will not eat enough collagen to get the clinical benefits. So, what I'll have people do is to start off with 2 to 3 months, I'm going to have you use like 3 scoops of it in a coffee or a hot beverage.
Mhm.
So, 3 scoops a day for 2 to 3 months, and then back off to two, and then just keep it there. And you should notice some benefits. So collagen, yeah, tell us about what are people squawking about with collagen?
Well, the biggest one is that it's not a complete protein, so why
Uh-huh.
are you even bothering with it?
Right. Right.
And I think that's probably the biggest one that I
Yeah,
hear,
I would
that
agree.
it's not a complete protein.
I would agree. And so to that, I would say, you know what? N- Besides meat, like unless you're carnivore, then why eat a bean? Why eat a piece of
Yeah.
rice? That's also not a complete protein. They are
Mhm.
contributing to an amino acid pool. So,
Yep.
if you don't have an understanding of how amino acid is stored in the body, then I could see where you could make that argument. But if you really understand the amino acid pool and the reservoir that contains amino acid and how the body puts these together to make your own endogenous protein, then you understand that collagen contributes to the pool. Thank
Yep.
you. Good night. And drink your flippin' collagen. No,
Right?
so collagen is great for and you've all heard this, hair, skin, nails, but also
Mhm.
joints. To keep
Yes.
your joints lubricated. Like collagen is great. And think about this. So can your body make its own collagen? Yes, of course it can. However, the things that we're talking about here, hair, skin, nails, um, collagen helps all of those. So if your body is in a constant state of like stress or protein deprivation, it's not going to take the time to make collagen to make your nails pretty if you don't
Mhm.
have enough protein on board to make the enzymes that keep you alive, right? Your
Yep.
body is
Mhm.
going to triage and it's not going to make those things that, plump up your skin, make your nails long and strong, make your hair
Mhm.
pretty. That's way, way, way down on the list. So adding collagen on top of your normal protein is a great thing.
I have it every morning.
Yep, me too.
All right, you've already touched on it, but your beloved island food,
Oh my
cod
gosh.
liver oil.
Yes, I love cod liver oil. And I will even give out 3 brands that I love.
Before
Um mhm.
before we move on, I think you kind of mentioned it. Where do you get collagen from in foods?
Oh, collagen can be found bone broth. Folks,
Yep.
make bone broth. I made some lamb bone broth that is the stuff of legends. Like I will never forget that batch of lamb bone broth. It gelled. Made so much. It was incredible. Yeah, save those bones. They are full of collagen, especially joint and marrow bones. Yeah, just save your bones.
Yep. Um, Maybe do you have a favorite recipe I can link in the show notes?
Yes, I there's like you sent it to me. I can't
Oh.
take credit for this. It's that egg drop.
Oh.
I kind of call it bone drop soup. Um,
Oh yeah.
and so yeah, it's where you swirl, like you take your bone broth and you put it on the stove, you bring it to a boil, and then you have like a couple of pastured eggs, and you whip those up, and then you add them slowly to the boiling bone broth, and you'll get like an egg drop soup.
Oh, Nate. Oh yeah. That's a yes, I remember that one. But
Uh huh.
just
Oh, you mean
making
an
bone
actual
broth,
bone broth? There are a million and six recipes for how to make bone broth.
and they're all
On
fine.
They're all good. Yes,
Okay.
it's basically just get roasted bones. I would not use raw bones. I would roast them. It improves deepens the flavor. Color equals flavor in cooking. And so I would make sure that your bones are roasted. However, if your bones came from a chicken that you cooked, they're already roasted and cooked. So you don't
Okay.
have to go through that step. But yeah, if you save your bone from lamb chops or from a T-bone steak, that's already cooked. So you don't need to worry about roasting the bones. Yeah. And then just cook them long enough. But yeah, there's tons and tons of recipes out there.
All right. Now, cod liver oil.
Okay, so the cod liver oil. Um, there are 3 kinds of cod liver oil. I've tried all 3. These aren't the bougie cod liver oil. If you wanna go Rosita's or Green Pastures, be my guest. Super bougie, so good. But but if you are a mere mortal like myself, I like Nordic Naturals, I like Vital Nutrients, and I like Pharmax. And all 3 of those are going to be very, very good brands of cod liver oil.
And I do the Nordic Naturals orange flavor, citrus flavor,
Oslo orange, yes,
and
yep,
it is actually tasty. So,
that's right. Well, I mean, tasty is a bit of a misnomer,
I mean,
but
I'm not gonna go drink the whole bottle, but
yeah.
for my dosage
Mhm.
every day, I it's
Yeah.
more than capable.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm super proud of you. Um, all right.
And
So
it sorry,
yeah.
well, is cod liver oil cod liver oil one that you would recommend always supplementing, or if you're eating 2 to 3 times a week your fatty fishes, you may not need to supplement?
Well, cod liver oil has so many other things in it that
Okay.
I always recommend ahead of that. And especially, so if you're trying to pulse this or you're worried about getting too much vitamin A, just do it through the winter
Okay.
to shore up your immune system. Yeah.
Alright. Sounds good.
Oh, let
Okay.
me tell you. Okay, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Let me tell you something that I learned about cod liver oil. Okay.
Do tell.
So I will. So apparently, the United States was a huge importer of cod liver oil. And this was like, I don't know, 130 years ago. And because do you remember hearing stories about kids having to eat cod liver oil every single day? Eat your cod liver oil. Does that
Oh,
ring a bell
yeah.
with you?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
So kids used to have to this was like prairie medicine or kitchen medicine, right? Where people would give their kids cod liver oil, and it was just like a daily ritual. You had to take your cod liver oil every day because it kept you from getting sick. Well, with the advent of antibiotics, they were discovered and then became commercially available. Imports of cod liver oil went down by like some crazy number of like, I want to say 70 to 90%. We just didn't use it anymore because we had these drugs, right? And
Oh.
so look at what those drugs have done to our guts.
Mhm.
So rather than take the cod liver oil, we just decided, we get sick, we'll just take an antibiotic.
Wow.
Um, but people didn't know. People didn't know that they, are kind of indiscriminate killers of all, some good bacteria in your gut too. They cause a lot of problems. So anyway, just story about cod liver oil. We need to get back to making that um, a morning ritual.
I'm all for it.
All right.
All
Okay.
right, probiotics.
Yeah, so we already talked about prebiotics with the fiber. And so now I'll talk a little bit about probiotics. This is one thing where I really recommend people get it from food. There's just no reason not to. There's a lot of people taking probiotics.
Mhm.
Just like I have patients ask me all the time, like, what probiotics should I be on? And I'm
Yep.
like, well, um, what would you be taking it for? Well, just like a daily thing, and that's great. You should definitely be ingesting good bacteria. You should definitely be doing that. But we can actually get way more of it from food than we can from a supplement. Now, here is my caveat with this. So, my GI professor in my master's program, he is a famous gut gut specialist naturopath, and he lives in Tasmania. The guy is brilliant, like absolutely brilliant. But anyway, he uses as a naturopath, he uses very specific probiotic bacteria. He uses them like drugs because they've all got different clinical properties. They do different things in the gut. And so, like if he was treating SIBO, or if he was treating IBS, or if he was treating this or that, then he would use different strains of bacteria. Now, that is the only time that, like, if I'm treating something very specific, then I will look into the literature and see, okay, what specific strains have been used to treat this specific condition. But otherwise, if we're just giving probiotics, like, just eat your yogurt. And here's a plug for Nancy's organic yogurt. This
Yep.
stuff is the greatest. It has studied strains of bacteria in it, and it is incredible for you. So,
Now, I
love
know you like
Nancy's.
the full fat one. Do you
Mhm.
know if because the
Same
one that
thing.
okay.
Yeah, same strain of bacteria in the fat-free, and I kind of go back and forth. I'll just get honestly around here,
I
Nancy's, I
just
I
yeah.
get it at like a grocery store that sells kind of overstock stuff. And so I just get whatever Nancy's they have.
Okay, cause yeah, I can typically find the non-fat ones here,
Yes.
but I
Yeah.
haven't been able to find the full fat.
Yeah, and sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's hard. I do try to stick to the organic.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'll go back and forth between fat-free and full fat just depending on what's available.
And it actually tastes good, folks. Like,
Oh, it's
it's not
amazing. Yeah.
yeah, it's actually really good. It's got that really good sour yogurt taste
Mhm.
that yeah, so
Yeah.
go get you some.
That's right.
Last one that we have today, for this episode is a multivitamin, which,
Yeah.
that's
Oh.
another big hot topic.
Mhm. Yeah, do you take a multi?
I do not.
Yeah, I don't either. So I I would much rather get that baseline level of nutrition and phytonutrients, minerals, vitamins. I would much rather get that from a whole, well-rounded diet than I would from a multi. So gosh, I can't even remember the last time I have recommended a multi. Now, I will say, if you've got like Uncle Hal and he is 280 pounds and he is sick and has congestive heart failure and he eats like garbage, then yeah, if you could get him to take a good multi, then do it. I mean, do it.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah, so it's kind of like pick your pick your battles here. But if
Right.
somebody's just
Mhm.
absolutely eating trash, if you've got a kid, sometimes kids with autism, it's very, very, very difficult to get them to eat anything outside of just kind of processed carbs.
Right.
That's kind of a common thing with those kiddos. And if you can get them to take a multivite, do it.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So, yeah,
Um,
and I
so
think that's
along
all.
those yeah, but along those lines, the one that's very, very popular and it's get promoted on a ton of podcasts
Mm.
is the AG1 Athletic Greens.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Um, eh, I don't know. Just eat good food.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Like, if you're again, going back to, like, if you're struggling getting that in with your food because, like myself, back in the day,
mhm.
I was just horrible, maybe AG1 or some athletic form of greens might be good to supplement until you build up that tolerance,
Yeah. Yeah,
or that
but
you can kinda build up your
here's what
better
I
diet.
see. Here's what I see. I see people eating carnivore and not putting a vegetable in their faces and saying, "Yeah, but I take athletic greens."
Yeah.
And it's like, "Well, okay, but not the same.
Yeah.
Not the same." You're you need that whole food, right?
Yeah.
It's back to the Brazil nuts, right? Like
Mhm.
there are certain things that we haven't even identified yet in the whole food sources.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if you wanna dehydrate a couple kale leaves and whir 'em around in a coffee grinder and call that good, then, I mean, okay, but you
Yeah.
could do better.
And kind of like, back to why we even started this podcast, we're not looking for just subpar, we're looking for optimal health. We're looking
Yeah.
for, we're wanting to do better than just okay. So,
Mhm. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
both Andrea and I are big proponents of getting whole sources of food as much as possible throughout your
Mhm.
diet, and that's where we want to get most of our nutrients. So, well, I hope
Amen,
this
sister.
episode was helpful, enlightening, educational, all the things, on just kind of some supplements that you can get from foods, and maybe some that we just recommend to supplement anyways. But if you have any questions, like always, please shoot us an email or find us on the grams. But we love hearing from you. If
We
you
do.
can if you can do us a favor, when go back to our episode on, I can't remember, it's one of the beginning ones on how to ask questions. I think it was one of our Q&A episodes.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think it was our first Q&A episode. If you can go back and listen to the first part of that Q&A episode, that kind of helps break down how best to ask a question to us. Asking generalized questions are not going to get the best results in
Oh,
form of
no,
a answer, and a lot of the times it's going to be frustrating on our end because we want to be able to dive deeper, but we just can't. There's a
yeah.
million questions that
Yeah.
you can.
Well, and so I don't want anybody to be confused. Like the opposite of a general question is a very specific question, and sometimes
Yes.
we get very specific questions like about someone's personal health, and we can't. I would not be able to advise. Ashley would not be able to advise
Yeah.
without actually knowing you. That's akin to giving medical advice, and we just
Uh-huh.
can't do it not
Yeah.
knowing you at all. And
Yeah.
so yeah, there's this sweet spot of where they're not over general, like um I don't know, do you take vitamins, or what vitamins
Yeah.
should I
Yeah.
take? Like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, where they're not over general, but again, they're not over specific either. So yeah, we did go through the best way to ask questions, and you guys have come up with some amazing questions that we
Yes.
have researched and come up with the best answers that we could for you. So yeah,
Mhm.
we're ready and willing to entertain and answer whatever's important to you. So let us know.
Absolutely. So find our contact information in the show notes, but we will continue this discussion in our next episode on what supplements you may not be getting enough from food and why we recommend potentially supplementing these. So we will catch you then.
Bye. The content provided in the AA podcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only. The podcast is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. The information and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not constitute medical advice.